You're live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Net podcast number 2005. Creating a legacy, turning family history into a treasure. So, what is your favorite story about your ancestors and why does it stand out for you? What have you taken the time to record it, to write it down, to find some way that you can pass? Oh, hang on, the mouse sitting on the end of my nose. Have you found a way that you can add it to your legacy and your treasure trove of family history so that it can be passed down to future generations? So tonight we're going to be having a look at, what are we looking at? Oh, yeah, sorry. I had a, nope, where did I put it? There it is. I have a list. So tonight we're going to have a look at, that family history isn't just about charts and records. It's also about the stories that bring your ancestors to life. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to turn your research into a meaningful legacy. And you can do this by recording, by telling a story, recording by vocal, recording by writing. Even you can do talk to text, where you have a mic, where you have a recorder on. There's a lot of programs out there. Even AI is getting in on this now too, where you can start talking and it will transcribe it for you as you talk. So there's a way that you can do that as well. You can do it on video, and then and maybe because you might have some photographs you want to show at the same time, and then you can transcribe that. Something like Cast Magic, where you can get in there and it will transcribe the video for you. It can do just the audio portion. It can do the video portion. It can create a whole bunch of stuff from there that you can utilize in books and things like that as well. So let's dive in. So why storytelling matters in genealogy? It's an emotional connection. You've got all these facts and figures sitting there. You've got this person's name and their birth date and their death date and their marriage date and who they got married to and who all the kids were, who their parents were, who their siblings were, who their aunts and uncles were. It's all facts and figures. But you can create an emotional connection. And if you're finding photographs as too, you start adding faces to these people. And the cool part is in Ancestry and my heritage, you can upload photographs and you can have the profile picture of your ancestor relatives. You can have their profile pictures added. So when you're looking at the tree, you get to see all of their pretty little faces. Yes, some pictures won't be the greatest. A lot of pictures these days, when I see them on trees, are of the tombstones because they don't have or haven't had access to scan the photographs of their ancestors. They may not even have photographs of their ancestors. They may just have the picture of the tombstone, or a picture of a certificate, like a marriage certificate or a death certificate or a birth entry in a parish record somewhere. They may have just an image of a document and that's it. They don't actually have a picture of their ancestor. Whenever you can find pictures of ancestors and you've got a tree, put those pictures in there so you've got a face, because now you have a person. It is it was a real living person. When you've got a face there on a profile in your family tree, it brings it's not just a name with dates anymore. It is now a person. It is now somebody you are related to. And you want to know something really interesting? So this happened a few months ago. So I have a seventh cousin on my mother's side of the family who lives in Wales. And he posted this picture of him and his husband and a couple of their friends. Actually, I think it might have been another couple with them. But anyway, he was there and I'm looking at that picture and I'm going, that looks like my uncle on my dad's side. And so I bought a picture of my uncle and my seventh cousin on my mother's side up next to each other. They could have been brothers. They had such similar facial features. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's wild and it's wacky. But being able to put faces to names makes them more alive for you. You can turn around and when you've got that face there, when you've got a face of that relative or that ancestor, they now become a person who lived, a person who lived. They may be past because usually we're dealing with dead people. And I know some people are going to take offense to this, but basically with genealogy, we're playing hide and seek with dead people. And I know some people will take offense to that because it seems disrespectful to those of our relatives who have passed. But I like to look on the fun side of things, is that we really are playing hide and seek with our ancestors. That's what we're doing. And our ancestors have passed. So it becomes a game of finding out who they were, finding out more information for them, finding about their stories. And when you've got a face that you can put to it, it suddenly has an emotional connection. You suddenly having a connection with this person. So it's taking them from being a name on a chart to being a person. It was like when Brad was in hospital during his last 3 months, when he was in hospital, we actually brought in a photograph of him and had his name on that photograph hanging above his bed. So when the medical staff came in, they could see he was a person with a name, not just a patient number on a chart. And that had such a huge impact because now they were actually interacting with a person and not a patient. They could see this person. And we put up we put up family pictures, a picture of him with his grandson and that sort of thing. And it gave them, and he suddenly became a real life person to them. Even though he was a critically ill patient, he became a person to them because yes, they could see him in bed, but putting those photographs up reminded the medical staff that he has a family, that he has a story, that he is a living person, not just a body in a bed with a number. That's a live body in a bed with a number. He was a person. So that made it interesting once we did that, how they were more likely to interact with him instead of just coming in, we're coming in here and we're going to do this, that. It gave them a connection. So putting a photograph on your family tree gives you now a connection. And it doesn't matter if it's old and it's grainy, you have a picture there. And that's the cool part. And if it's a face, it's even better because it's not a tombstone. It's not a certificate. So, if you can get pictures of your ancestors, even if somebody in the family has the photographs, ask if you can scan them. On your phones these days, there's like scanner programs that you can get for photographs that you can just hold the camera over the photograph, take a picture, and it does, and now you've got a picture that you can now upload to Ancestry or to MyHeritage or whatever program you are using to track your tree, and you can now put these faces on there with the names. So now you have a person. And also too, when you are discussing the stories with the younger family members, you've now got a face that they can look at. So they can see that face. And the cool part is they'll be able to start seeing family resemblance in the photographs to different people. They go, oh, that looks like, I've got one picture of my my second great-grandmother with her second husband. Standing behind her are the children that survived from her first marriage, because she lost a couple of kids in there. So I think there was 4 in that photograph, including my great-grandmother. And then she has children from her second marriage. Now, that was my second great-grandmother. Standing next to her second husband was my great-grandmother. And I looked at that and I thought, that looks like my grandmother. So very facial features. But not only did it look like my grandmother, it was a spitting image of my cousin on my mother's side of the family. And every time I see that, I see both my grandmother when she was a child, because I've seen photographs of her as a child. So not only did I see her as a child there in that photograph, I also saw my cousin, because very similar facial features, very, very similar. And it's such a cool picture. And I love that picture because every time I see it, I know that there's my second great-grandmother, there's my great-grandmother, but I can also see my grandmother and my cousin in that photograph as well. And it's just so much fun. And I do have somewhere documented who's in that photograph. I have all the names written down because I've asked my mum like 3 or 4 times, who's in this picture? And so I think it was like, she did reply in an email like 3 times. So now we can, and we were on a Zoom one time and I put the picture up and she goes, well, that's and named everybody in the picture. So that was pretty cool to get the names and about when the picture was taken. So we have the basic of who's in the photograph. We have an about time of when it was taken. We just don't have the where. Although because they were living in the town they were living at the time, we can make a good guess. And it would be a guess that this photograph was taken in the town that they were living in at the time, in that era. So that's as much as we can get. And the only reason we can get about the time is we're looking at the ages of the children that are in the photograph. And that's why we get the about time, not the exact time, because we don't have, I don't think, where did I get that picture from? I might have swiped it off somebody else's tree. Yes, I do that quite often. People have pictures on their tree, they submit them, and they've got them open public, and you can go in and swipe them, put them on yours. So the way that you can turn your genealogy into a legacy project is you can create a family history book and include photographs, scanned documents, and well-written narratives. And you can find a lot of the narrative that you can write. You can talk about what's in the marriage certificate, the death certificate, and that sort of thing. You can put there even who reported the information for the death certificate. And when you do that, when you're reporting who provided the information for the death certificate, you can even put how they were related. On some death certificates, it would have the informant's name and how they were related to the deceased. On others, they don't. But if you've done your research, you may know who that person is. Is it a family member, or is it somebody who could have been a neighbor? And you can find that out by looking at their name on census reports and all that sort of stuff, and directories and everything else. You can organize the chapters by ancestor, location, or time period. And when you're writing the narratives too, you're pulling in times in history, events in history that were taking place at the time that involved your ancestors. Like, for example, if they were on the Titanic, put that they were on the Titanic and that they survived and how they survived and where they ended up. Like, we have these Harpers. He was Pastor, was he John? What was his name? I think it was John Harper. Joshua Harper. No, that was my grandfather. There was a Harper that was on the Titanic. We haven't worked out whether he's related to us or not, because there's actually very little as ancestry information available about him online, and his daughter and the nanny that they had with us. Now, there's a rumor that the nanny was a cousin, or there's a rumor that the nanny was actually his sister-in-law. So there's all these rumors about who the nanny actually was. And so we're trying to figure out who the nanny is. We have her name. We know that unless she was married and widowed, then her last name was different from his wife's last name. And his wife had passed away, and he was called to go to a church in America. So him and his daughter and the nanny were on the Titanic when she went down, and he stayed on board the ship. The nanny took the child. They got into the lifeboat. They were saved. They went on to live a long life. The daughter ended up going back to England because they no longer could go to the church, because it was meant to be her dad that was going to be a pastor at this church. And so they ended up back in England. I'm still trying to find the records, but I know they ended up back in England because of further records that I found later on. But I'm still trying to find out if there's a connection to my Harpers or not. So that's one of those ongoing projects where I go in every now and again and see what's been added that could help with this. So there's that. And if you've ever seen the movie The Titanic, and there's the pastor that's there that's saving people's lives for those that are still on the boat as it's sinking and everything else, that is supposed to be Pastor Harper. So, so he is immortalized in a movie. But he was the pastor. When they talk about the pastor being on board the ship and asking people, have you been saved? Have you been saved? That was him. And helping those in those last final moments before the boat actually sank. Before the ship sank. Boats go on ships. Get my hand slapped for that one. Look at the time. So if it was around the time the Titanic sank and your relatives were not on the Titanic, then don't mention it. Mention something else that may have been happening. There could have been a rally for something going on in town that had nothing to do with the Titanic, unless you had somebody on there, or there's, unless you had somebody on the Titanic, there's no need to mention it. If you had somebody that was involved in the Civil War, then yes, talk about it. Find their records and talk about what battles they fought in. Were they ever a prisoner of war? Talk about that. Dig deep into the history of if they were a prisoner of war. Find out where they were held as a prisoner, and looking up the historical records and everything else, you can find out what the conditions were like that they had to live in. And some of them had to live in some really bad conditions. I mean, I was watching. I love watching Who Do You Think You Are and Genealogy Roadshow. Any program to do with genealogy, I will sit and watch. But I always remember one of them, and I can't remember who might have been Kelly Clarkson. Not 100% sure on that one. Do not quote me on that. But I have a feeling it might have been her. But she was taken to what is left of the prison where one of her ancestors was taken. And so whoever the celebrity was, they were taken to this big empty field where they still have they have ruins there from the prison that they stayed in. It was all outdoors. They had tents they had to sleep in. They had appalling conditions. There was no sanitation there or anything else. People were sick. There wasn't enough food to feed these guys. It was appalling conditions. But this is part of that ancestor's story. So bringing that alive and letting people and letting your descendants, that's the word I was looking for, your descendants, all those people around, or letting the family know that this was the conditions that they lived in, and they may have survived or they may have died there. But you can look up the military records, see what battles they fought in, and then go doing some digging and finding out some history about that battle. Where did it start? Who won? What were the number of casualties? Just find out the conditions that they were living in and all that. If you go to Gettysburg, definitely, whatever you do, go through the museum. The museum there is absolutely amazing. I still remember the impact that it had on me, that we went through one part, and this was the Confederate side, and this is what their conditions were like. And then you went on to the Union side. So much, it was like night and day difference between between what they had as supplies, the conditions that they lived in, night and day difference. It was unbelievable that there was such a big difference. So finding out more about that type of thing, put it in there. So that's one way that you can do that. And if you've got photographs, if you can get photographs of that time that were taken at that time, you include those there. Your relative may or may not be in that particular drawing. A lot of them were drawn at that time. You can put that stuff in there. If you can find photographs, put them in there too. Anything you can put in there to make it come alive for those you're sharing with. Put those stories in the history book. You can do a family tree visualization, which is creating family trees with photos, dates, and short stories for each person. So as you got them on the tree, you've got like a little summary of their life on there, or something that they were known for. Something that they were known for in their life. Put that in there. They may have discovered whatever. They may have invented an engine, or I don't know. They may have invented a pen. I don't know. It was just here on my desk. They may have invented something. So put that in there if they were an inventor of something. So patent records are another place you can go and find information on relatives as well, especially if they filed a patent. You can do, short stories, dates, photographs. On that, you can use professional design tools or genealogy software to make it more visually appealing if you wish. You can do multimedia projects, which record interviews with older family members and compile them into a video memoir. Create a digital timeline using tools like Canva or Prezi. I haven't used Prezi, so I can't recommend that. Canva, I'm in there on a daily basis. Canva and me, we're like this. Yes. And you can incorporate audio, video, and images together to tell the story. Make a little mini movie on there. And then you put it on, then you create a private YouTube page, so the only people that can get to it and see those videos, those short little videos about these relatives and things, are those who have the link. You can do it that simple. And you can do these little short videos of different family members in the tree, and you can put in there that this is this person, this is when they were born, and where in the tree they fit. So you can actually bring up an image of the tree and put a little circle around that person, or highlight that person so they can see, and they can see that you're down here at the bottom, and this is how the tree goes, and everything like that, so they can see where that person is in the tree. Let's see what else. You can do themed story collections, so focus on specific things like family recipes, war and resilience, migration journeys, and turn them into themed scrapbooks or journals with interactive elements for younger generations. That's always a fun thing. Teaching them geography of the country they might, where did they come from? Where did they go to? And having a world map and having, the trek drawn on there, or this is where they started, this is where they end up, and then having them figure out how they got there. That's always a fun thing to do. You can create a shared family blog or a website where everyone can contribute stories, photos, and updates. And you can get ones that are private, where you can, you don't want them SEO, you don't want them searchable or anything like that. You just put in there and there are some websites out there, and I'll have to go find them again, where you actually have to log in to get in to see the information, and you can make your website that way as well. Make it relatable to kids. Highlight stories that connect with their interests, like adventures, inventors, dramatic tales. I mean, when you think about genealogy, when you think about family history, there is mystery, murder. Yes, there is murder in some cases. Adventure, exploration. You've got migrations. You've got romance, love. What else do you have in there? Anything you can, just about anything, any genre. Think of all the genres of books that are out there, and just about all of them are in there, except for sci-fi and fantasy. Those were two that would probably not be in there at all. But you never know. But think of those stories. What are kids interested in? Do they like stories of adventures? Then turn the story of a migration journey into an adventure about why they left where they were and where they moved to and migrated to, and why. Because it might have been some political thing, it could have been some religious persecution, there could have been a number of reasons that they decided to leave. Most of my relatives that ended up in New Zealand, the government put out a call saying, hey, we will help you get to we need people to colonize New Zealand. We will help with your fare to get out there. And there was actually on the passenger list, it was how much the government paid for that person to sail to New Zealand and settle in New Zealand. So they got government assistance in those cases, and they never had to pay it back, which was really cool. Turn those stories into stories of adventure, of exploration and adventure. Maybe they were on a wagon trail across the US. What a cool story to tell. Maybe they invented something. Tell that story too. There's stories of kidnapping. I've come across stories of kidnapping. I've come across stories of clients' families who were related to famous historical figures. I've come across stories where one family was deeply into a very big it was big in the area it was in, but a very well-known historical event. I've found people who are related into that. There's a whole bunch of, and when you're going through and you find these stories, you're like, no. And you get all excited, but then it's like, hang on, take a step back. Let's walk away for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to verify. We need to verify that the people that are named in there are the ones that fit into the family tree. Because it's all excited to go, oh, they're related to blah, 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 blah. Oh, this is great. Click, 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 click. Yeah. And then you find out they're not. Yeah. So when you get that and you get all excited, allow the excitement to come through, and lift the hands off the keyboard. Hands off the keyboard. Step away for a few minutes. It could be 15, 20, however long it takes the energy of the excitement out of you. And then calm yourself down. And I would say allow maybe about an hour before you sit down, at least an hour before you sit down and look at it again. Because you're still going to be on a high. Oh my gosh, we've got these adventures in here and these adventures and da-da-la-la-la. Step away for at least an hour. Allow yourself to digest what you've just seen. Allow yourself to calm down, and then be able to come back with an open mind and an analytical mind as well to look, are these people, yes, they've got the same last name. Yes, they've got the same name of somebody in our tree, but are they actually the right person? Remember how we've talked about in the past about errors and how they happen. It could be you've got people who have the same name, and this one belongs to this exciting event over here, which would be really, really cool. Or are they part of this one over here, which has absolutely nothing to do with the event that took place over here, which could be a letdown, but you've got to make sure you got the right person in the tree. So now you've got to start the verification process. How do you do the verification process? Grab yourself a copy of this. It's all in here. How to verify, how to find the proof, everything. Everything that we do and as genealogists, in here it tells us how to do it. How do we know that person's, and how to research and what sort of information we need to be looking for, and what the difference is between primary sources and secondary sources, and is it direct evidence or is it indirect evidence? Is it hearsay? So we need to filter it through these processes, which are all in here, on how to find that information and make sure and verify that information is correct and part of the tree. And then once you've verified everything again, then you can have a party. So just remember that one. And you can turn them into scrapbooks. Where am I up to on my list? You could collaborate with other family members to create the blog, a website where they can all contribute stories and everything else, to help engage younger generations, make it relatable to them. Are they looking for stories of adventure? Are they looking for people? Are they people who like to build things and invent things? And you'll know because of their imagination when they're playing with toys and things, that maybe they'll be interested in a story of how great-grandfather Jones invented blah, 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 blah. And maybe they'll be interested in that tale. Maybe it's something that they use that they can tell their friends, my second great-grandfather invented that. How cool would that be? I know my great uncle, he was the husband of my grandfather's twin sister. And he used to race jet boats. Now, he didn't invent the jet engine. That was the guy Hamilton that invented the jet engine. But what he did do is he was a boat racer. He raced boats. And when we were at the Southwoods Car Museum, which is near where my parents live in New Zealand, and near where I'm going to be moving. We went to, the last time I was in New Zealand in 2019, we went to Southwoods Car Museum. I love that place. It's really, really cool. They have a very small percentage of the entire collection on display at any one time. And they had their, she's called the Scarlet Lady, I think she's called. It was this big jet boat. And it had there like all of the wins that Len Southwood is the guy who collected everything and left the museum as his legacy. But I found out during that my great uncle and Len Southwood would often race each other, and they were first and second, and they would switch. Somebody got first in one race, then the other one did the next race, and they were going backwards and forwards on who won things. So my great uncle was very much big into the jet boating sports, so much so that two of his sons were also involved with it and would help him build engines and everything else, and tweak the boats, and they would go racing as well. In fact, one of my first cousins once removed, so my dad's cousin, was actually killed during a race because if he hadn't done what he had done, the other guy in the race would have been killed. So he actually sacrificed himself so this other guy could live. It was a tragic story in our family, but it was all around jet boating. But my great uncle, him and Len Southwood were often 1 and 2, and they would switch who was 1 and who was 2 every single time on the races and things. And I never knew that my great uncle would race boats with Len Southwood, and I didn't know that Len Southwood was very much into boat racing. And that was a story I discovered when I last visited Southwoods, and we were by the boat there. And my dad mentioned, because it was his uncle, my dad said to us, "Oh, did you know Uncle Pam?" He was actually Lloyd, and somehow we called him Pam. I don't know why. But Uncle Pam was this huge boat racer, which I knew he was a huge boat racer, but I didn't realize that that Len Southwood was as well, and the two of them used to race often. So that was something that I learned going through Southwoods Car Museum. You never know what you're going to find out when you're walking through museums. But and being able to take, family members to that museum and showing them this boat and telling them the stories, brings it alive, makes it more interactive for them, especially the younger kids. Use technology, introduce them to family history through apps like StoryCorps, Ancestry, MyHeritage. Organize a family scavenger hunt where kids discover their ancestors' stories. Share how they are part of this legacy and invite them to contribute their own stories. There's all sorts of things. And where are we at on time? Oh, we are near the bottom of the hour. Okay. So very quickly, you've got we can recommend tools like Canva for family trees, Storyworth for book creations, Animoto for doing videos and slideshows. We can help with some of that as well. There's some stuff that we will do here, and other stuff we actually have a third party that can do it for us. So start with a small project. Oh yeah, what did I do with that? I've got to find that. Start with a small project and tell the story behind it. Find a way to tell the story. Where are you going to do it visually? Are you going to do it mixed media? Use some of the ways that we've recommended already this evening to create that thing and to get the younger generation interested as well. When you've got somebody who's interested in going racing and all of that, and they've got jet boating in their ancestry, talk about it. Tell tell them about it. That gets them interested. Then they're like, oh, who else could be? What else have we got in there? There was a client who we found out her great-grandfather, I think it was her great-grandfather, I'm trying to remember, was the first to go when there was a new train track that opened, and he was the first to go through on the train track, and he took his 2 sons with him on that train ride through this. There was a tunnel that had been created to get through this mountain of things, and he was the train engineer who took his 2 sons on that train ride through this tunnel to get to the other side. It was all written up in the newspaper. It was a really cool story that she didn't know about. And so it was really cool for that. And I'm like thinking, one of my grandsons is interested in trains. Had that been in our family history, that would have been a story we told him. So find things that the younger generation is interested in. See if you can find a story in your family history that they can relate to, and start them there. Because they're going to, as soon as they hear that story and think, and they've got the photographs there to go with it, they're going to start thinking, who else in my family did this? What other things did they do? You're going to start sparking interest in it. So you get the younger generation involved. And just remember that family history isn't a hobby. It's a way of giving a voice to those who came before us. It is a way of giving a voice to those who came before us and telling their stories and preserving their stories for future generations. And don't forget, you have a story too. So you have to tell your story so that future generations don't have to go find it. Leave your story behind for them. Leave all the stories that you know, especially about you and your life. Write your own biography with different stories and things. And there's programs out there that will help you with that. There's one I'm looking at the moment. I'm testing it out to see how good it is. And if it's amazing as it sounds, then I will be bringing it to you. I'll actually see if I can get the founders of it to come on and talk about it. But basically, you sign up and they send you a question every week about your life, and you type in the answer. And at the end of the year, they send you a hardback printed copy of your book, which has 52 stories in there from your life. How cool would that be to leave to leave for your generation? And you can order multiple copies as well. But there's a price at the beginning, which is for one copy of a hardback book. You have some say on what the cover looks like. And when you're telling your story, you can upload pictures to go with your story. And they just take your story with your pictures, format it to different chapters and things with the photographs, and print the book at the end and send you a copy. How cool is that? So as soon as I finish once I finish evaluating it, I'm going to see if I can get the founders of that program to come on and we can interview them, so you guys get to hear firsthand about what this is, and I'll be able to tell my experiences about it as well. But with that, we are out of here. So start small. Find one small project that you can do about writing an ancestor story. Maybe it's a really cool story that's one of your favorite ones. Start with your favorite story to tell. That's the best place to start, is start with your favorite story. What is your favorite story? Go write it down. Your favorite story about an ancestor, go write it down. Then you've got that story out of the way. Then go to your next favorite story and just slowly start the process that way. For now, just write it out as a script. You can do talk to text, where you can get those programs that you just talk to and it types for you. You can sit and write by hand. You can sit and type it. It doesn't matter as long as you get it recorded. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Oh, no, hang on. No, we won't. It's Monday tomorrow. So Monday we will be on at 7 o'clock Pacific. 7 o'clock Pacific tomorrow night. So tomorrow night is 7 p.m. Pacific time. It's Monday. It's my busy, busy day. So go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you back here at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening Pacific time. Hei konera.